Ruth chapter 3. So we're working our way through this wonderful story, this wonderful account of Ruth. A couple of weeks ago we were looking at the relationship, the blessing that Boaz was towards Ruth and Naomi, the way he showed the grace of God. He's showing grace to Ruth. He saw her need, didn't he? He saw the need she had. He welcomed her in to his family. He provided protection for her. And he provided what she needed, which was food at that time. And the fact that when we look at Boaz in this story, this man, right, what we're seeing is a kind of foretaste, a glimpse of Jesus. Right, that's who we're seeing. It's a glimpse of Jesus. And that Jesus shows us grace. Do you know, he sees your need right now. He knows your need. And he welcomes you in. You don't have to get yourself clean to be welcomed into Jesus. You know, you see some of these religions, don't you, where they do all this washing. You don't have to be clean. He welcomes you in. You don't have to have it all sorted all right. He welcomes you. And he wants to, like the mother hen will put her wings over her chicks. All right? Jesus is like that. God's like that. He wants to protect you and love you and provide what you need. That's our wonderful Jesus. For Naomi and Ruth, right, it's something as simple as generosity changed everything. It absolutely changed their circumstances completely. But it doesn't just stop there. Do you hear wedding bells? I'm going to read, all right, chapter 3. Here we go. Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law, said to Ruth, "My daughter, shouldn't I try to look for a home that would be good for you? Isn't Boaz, whose young woman you've been working with, our relative? He will be separating the barley from its husks on the threshing floor tonight. Freshen up. Put on some perfume. Dress up. Go down to the threshing floor. Don't let him know that you're there until he's finished eating and drinking. And when he lies down, notice the place where he is lying. Then uncover his feet and lie down there. He will make it clear what you must do." Ruth answered her, "I will do whatever you say." Ruth went to the threshing floor and did exactly as her mother-in-law had directed her. Boaz had eaten and drunk to his heart's content, so he went and lay at the edge of a pile of grain. Then she went over to him secretly, uncovered his feet and lay down. At midnight, the man was shivering. When he turned over, he was surprised to see a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he said. She answered, "I am Ruth. Spread the corner of your garment over me because you are a close relative who can take care of me." Boaz replied, "May the Lord bless you, my daughter. This last kindness, that you didn't go after the younger men, whether rich or poor, is better than the first. Don't be afraid, my daughter. I will do whatever you say. The whole town knows that you are a woman who has strength of character. It is true that I am a close relative of yours, but there is a relative closer than I. Stay here tonight. In the morning, if he will agree to take care of you, that is good. He can take care of you. But if he doesn't wish to take care of you, then I solemnly swear, as the Lord lives, I will take care of you myself. Lie down until morning. So Ruth lay at his feet until morning. Then she got up early before anyone could be recognised. At that moment, Boaz thought to himself, I hope that no one will ever know that the woman came to the threshing floor. Then Boaz told Ruth, stretch out your cape you're wearing and hold it tight. So she held it tight while he measured out 6 measures of barley. Then he placed it on her back and went into the town. When Ruth returned, her mother-in-law, Naomi, asked, how do things go, my daughter? Ruth told Naomi everything the man had done for her. She said, he gave me these 6 measures of barley and told me not to come back to you empty-handed. Naomi replied, stay here, my daughter, until you know how it turns out. The man won't rest unless he settles this matter today. Lovely love story, isn't it, going on here? And it looks as if the people of Bethlehem need to buy new hats, get their suits out, ready for a wedding. I don't think they wore hats and suits for weddings, but there we go. I want us to think about marriage today. Marriage is God's design. Right? It's God's design. It's a building block for society. It's why we read right at the start of Genesis, right at the beginning of the Bible, in chapter 2, verse 24, it says this. That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Marriage between a man and a woman is God's idea. But marriage is under attack. It's under attack. Do you know, the most recent survey from 2021, when they do the survey of our population, do you know, it shows that there are more adults in the UK than ever before that have never been married and actually never even been in a cohabitation. People aren't getting together to live together as much as the past. Marriage seems to be on a downward trend. People seem to be turning their back on the idea of lifelong relationships. For Ruth and Boaz, though, there would have been no confusion about what marriage is. God's given gift. Sadly, good gifts given to us by God have the potential to be corrupted by evil. And one that's been so damaged in our age, particularly in Western nations, is marriage. It is. Do you know, it's very hard. I think it's almost impossible in our multimedia world not to have our own thoughts and ideas impacted by this corrupted view. A corrupted view of sexuality, of relationships and marriage. Do you know, it infiltrates every aspect of life. We're bombarded with it all the time. So marriage is under attack. But do you know what? It's not new. It isn't a new thing. Sometimes we can think, oh, we're in this generation, isn't it terrible? We're the ones suffering. Do you know, it's not a new thing. When God had this design for marriage, right, and he gave it to the Israelites, the people of God, do you know, it was a very different idea than what the rest of the cultures around them were trying to do. It was so different. One man with one woman? That wasn't how it was in all the other nations. God designed something different, and it came under attack right from early on. And the early church's teaching on marriage was extremely different, right, to those around them from the Greco kind of Roman world on their idea of relationships. What the church was teaching was very different, and it came under attack. Christian marriage has always been under attack, but we do seem to be in an age when this is more obviously the case. We do. We need our minds, we need our imaginations renewed so we can begin to think rightly again about marriage. We need the renewing work of the Holy Spirit as we read the Bible to help us reorder how we think about marriage and how we act, both as married people and as singles. God has given us many, many passages in the Bible to help teach us about marriage. And he's also given us wonderful stories in the Bible. Stories of real people who have struggled with the challenges and joys of marriage. The Book of Ruth is one such story. That's what it is. A story that helps us realign our thinking about sexuality, about relationships, and especially about marriage. Now, I'm very aware, when speaking about weddings and relationships and marriage, each of us will have a very different experience. We'll have very different feelings and emotions that kind of come to the surface when we talk about this subject. I know that. I understand that. Some of us might be married, enjoying the gift from God. Others may be married and going through a bit of a challenging time in their marriage right now. That can be true. Do you know, there'll be some of us that might approach this whole topic with a real sense of shame because of the choices we've made. That might be the case. Some of us might be living with long-term singleness. Others might be divorced. There could be some that are cohabiting and not married. And others of us might be attracted to people of the same sex, and we're trying to work out how do we live a celibate life as a follower of Christ. So we all come, don't we, with so many different things going on in our lives. And you might be thinking, well, why do I need to hear about marriage? Why do I need this message? Why do I need to know about relationships? Why don't I just twist the knife in my hurt heart already? It's already such a painful topic for me. Well, my hope, this is my hope, as we continue to explore this very short book in the Bible, is that each of us are going to grow in our understanding of God's design for relationships. God's design for marriage. This wonderful building block of society, the family. And you know, we're also all part of the family of God. Although the topic might not be relevant for you right now, it may be in the future, and I certainly hope it will be in your discipleship journey as you disciple others. Because relationships come up pretty quickly in that journey of discipleship. Now, first and foremost, and this is why we can talk about marriage, is because actually the Book of Ruth and the whole concept of marriage is really pointing to us to a relationship between Jesus and his church. So it's relevant to all of us because it's an image that helps us understand Jesus' love for the church. So it's important. And I hope as we explore the story, our hearts will be moved to worship. That's my hope. So, what is marriage? Well, I'll start off by saying this. Marriage is an act of obedience. It's an act of obedience. Culture tells us that personal fulfillment is the highest motivator. Do what makes you happy. We're told desire should be on the throne of our lives. Whatever you want to do in pursuit of your happiness, well, is what you should go after. That's what the world tells us. The world tells us desire is everything, and sadly, do you know what? It's destroyed other aspects of marriage. Remember, it says in James that if desire is not kept in check, it leads to sin. And then sin leads to death. This is what it says, James 1:14. Everyone is tempted by his own desires. We are all tempted by our desires, as they lure him away and trap him. Then desire becomes pregnant and gives birth to sin. And when sin grows up, it gives birth to death. You see, God has designed marriage for purposes that are bigger than just our personal desire. Am I saying that we should have some sort of cold, loveless marriage where we just resign ourselves to do the right thing? No, I'm not saying that. Yeah, when you open the Bible, you discover a wonderful depiction of erotic love in marriage. It's celebrated in the Song of Solomon, a graphic picture of romantic love. So erotic, do you know what? Young Jewish boys are not allowed to read it. Okay? Desire for your spouse has its place in marriage. Of course it does. But it isn't the only thing. It isn't the only thing. And I hope to show you, all right, that it's not even the main thing either. We live in an age when all the big purposes, all the grand designs about marriage have kind of been stripped away. We've been left with just this one strand, desire. It's a thin, fragile foundation for building relationships. Just think of a rope for a minute, right? Imagine a rope. What gives a rope strength? It's all those strands woven together, isn't it? Well, if you pluck away all the strands and leave just one, which is what's happened in our relationships in this age, if you're just left with desire, it's flimsy, it's fragile. It doesn't last. It can't last. There is so much more to marriage. So it's a gift from God. One man, one woman becoming one flesh. God created marriage for companionship on mission. We sometimes forget this. The reason God created Eve was to be a partner with Adam for the mission God had given them. They partner together. Man and woman come together to pursue God's purpose, to bring about the kingdom of God in the role of ruling and reigning over creation. Marriage also was created for procreation, having children wherever that is possible, and raising those children. And marriage, as we've said, is also created to show Christ's love for the church. That's the big picture. Why God created marriage is important for us. We want to walk in His will, don't we? We want to trust Him and obey Him. And do you know what? If we're going to be obedient to God, then do you know there are people that we can't marry? There are people we can't marry. If you're a Christian, if you're a Christ follower, then you can't marry someone who's outside the faith. You can't build life with different foundations. Do you know you can't marry someone of the same sex? That's what the Bible teaches us. Genesis says, and Jesus confirms marriages between one man and one woman. And you can't marry someone who's already married. The idea of a polygamous relationship. You might say, hold on. There are many examples in the Old Testament of men having more than one wife. Yes, there are, but that wasn't God's intention. Right? But remember, when you read the Bible, not every single thing that's written in the Bible is saying that's got God's approval. Murder in the Bible is recorded, but it's not saying God went, yeah, that's good. Right? Not everything in the Bible has got God's approval. So sometimes when they took more than one wife, they were following God's design. God's best design was one man, one woman, one flesh. So marriage is about obedience. Right? Another thing I want us to think about is that God has given us marriage actually to fulfill our desires, our God-given desires. I've already mentioned if the only thing that marriage is built upon is desire, it will struggle to last. But desire, when directed in a God-honouring way, can find its fulfilment in marriage. When desire is allowed to be king and push all those other reasons God has given us for marriage, we'll see brokenness. We see a rise in fatherless families, actually. We see an increase in pornography addiction. We see more loneliness going on if desire is king. And you know, those things don't just impact the adults, they impact the children too. They really do. As Christians, We need to take desire, which is a God-given thing, and put it back in its right place. Put it back in its right place. Now, we haven't always been good at this as a church. The church historically has gone two ways. One way we go to a place of fear. We begin to fear what's going on around us. We look at the world and we see what's going on, and we become fearful as a response to the hypersexualized age we live in. So we batten down the hatches and we want to apply extra rules, don't we? Oh, we want to have extra rules in place. We'll put loads of rules in place. If we do that, we tell our children, no, it'll be okay. That's what we try and do. But fear just means we end up saying that sex is dirty, and it isn't. It's a gift from God. And fear often then leads our children to rebelling against us, because they go, oh, you put all these rules up and they just rebel against it. Fear doesn't work. But you know, the other response we can often do as a church is we just give in to culture then. Let's just give in. Some Christians look and say, well, the world has changed. We aren't expected to go back to old expectations of sex found in the Bible, are we? Wasn't Jesus all about love anyway? You end up with churches and church leaders condoning and embracing any and every lifestyle choice in the name of love. But I would say this to you, they are damaging their people and their churches. They are. Do you know, we must never ever bless what God doesn't bless. We must never do it. So we need to resist fear. Fear can't be the reason we change things. But we also need to resist compromise, don't we? Do you know, God created sex, so God gets to set the rules. God says sex only belongs in marriage between one man and one woman. And no matter how many laws are passed by governments that say something different, God alone gets to decide what sex is and what sex is for. So what's the right way to view sex? Well, we need to recover a kind of holy fear, a holy awe around the preciousness of sex and sexual love. And in the story of Ruth, we see this displayed in a God-honouring way. Now, there's definitely sexual attraction going on. Definitely. Naomi tells Ruth to prepare herself for seeing Boaz. Freshen up, put some perfume on, dress up, and go down to the threshing floor. Right? There's sexual attraction. She's making herself beautiful for him. She says, when he lies down, notice where he's lying, and then go and uncover his feet and lie down there. Now, I've got no idea, really, why she uncovers his feet. I've read loads of books. I think it's something been lost in history to really be true. People try and make up ideas, like it's some sort of sign I'm available. Some say it's actually because his feet got cold, which meant he was shivering, which is why he woke up in the middle of the night. No one really knows deep down exactly what that was all about. All right, we don't. You can come up with your own conclusion what you think that was all about. But anyway, she does this thing of uncovering his feet. But there's an understanding that there is some sort of attraction that's going on between these two people. There's an attraction there. And Paul says this, he says, do you know what? If you've got desire, then that should compel you to marriage. If a man burns, he should marry. Don't just sit with your temptation and therefore stumble into sin. Just get married. That's Paul's advice. And Boaz doesn't hang around. All right? He doesn't hang around. We'll find out as we move through the story. But he says, I will sort this out tomorrow. I'm going to get on with this. I'm not hanging around, all right? Massive long engagements. All right? Not a great thing. If you're raising your kids, talk to them about it, yeah? All right? Stay big friends. Groups of friends are good. Groups of friends, boys and girls, all going out, doing stuff together. And then when it's right and they know this is the one, short engagement, get married. It's much better. He does have this thing of saying, well, there's somebody else that actually comes before me, and we'll look at that another time. All right, that's in future week. But there's another man who kind of closer relative, so he has to go through some kind of checking whether this person wants to be the one that takes Ruth to care for her. But what we need to realise, there's an element of attraction, sexual desire, that motivates them towards marriage, and there is urgency. But you know what? I think there's something else going on in this story. Something else going on that I think is far more significant that's drawing Ruth and Boaz together. Yes, there is attraction. Yes, there is desire. But there's something far more significant. And if I was to give you one piece of advice, those of you that are married, this would be it. Okay? This is the big moment. You ready? We see something in the story displayed by both Ruth and Boaz, right? They don't just display it, they also see it in each other as well. And this is kindness. What? Is that it? Yeah. Kindness. Let me show you what I mean. Boaz has been so kind to this foreign woman. She fell on her face in gratitude. She was overwhelmed by Boaz's kindness. And I think she was attracted to his kindness. I really do. But Boaz is equally overwhelmed by Ruth's kindness. Ruth's kindness to Naomi. Do you know, her kindness had been the talk of the town. Everyone knew about Ruth in Bethlehem. And her kindness, how she'd left her home, her nation, her family, her gods, and travelled with Naomi to a land where she was most likely going to be mistreated. Boaz is attracted to Ruth because of her kindness. And verse 10, we read that actually it's the kindness. He said, that was greater kindness than all the kindness you've shown so far, what you've shown me. At the heart of this union of a man and a woman is kindness. I'm not going to, well, I will embarrass them, I'm going to say this. My mum and dad have been married over 60 years. How many years? 63. 63 years. Now, I don't know what they were like in the first few years of their marriage, but I know them for the last 56 years. And I can tell you, kindness is at the root of it. It is. The way they speak about each other, to each other, the way they think about each other, the way they act towards each other, is kindness. Whether there's any desire left in their reaches, I don't know. You can ask them. I'm not going to ask them. I'm their son. You can ask them. But you know what? It's kindness. This is how God designed marriage to be. A relationship that has a spark, has attraction, has desire, yes, in eros love, right, desire, romantic love, yes. But underpinning it, there needs to be kindness, agape love. There needs to be that kind of love. Both are important in marriage. Eros love, agape love. Eros love can't survive though unless there's this kindness, agape type of love. A covenant love. Why is agape love, this kindness, at the heart of marriage? Because that's how God loves you. That's how he loves you. He's kind to you. He's kind. Marriage is a picture of God's love for his people. So what am I saying about marriage? As we see these two people, Ruth and Boaz, begin to move towards a loving union. Marriage is a gift from God. One man, one woman, becoming one flesh. Marriage is for companionship on mission. It's about going. It's about fulfilling God's call on our lives. Marriage is for companionship on mission, but it's also, where possible, for the raising of children. And marriage is this wonderful picture of Christ's commitment to his church. Yes, marriage is to satisfy sexual desire, but it's also built on kindness. One final thing. The final thing about marriage is it's a place of rest. Naomi encourages Ruth to find a husband because she wants her to find rest. Verse 1, then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, my daughter, should I not seek rest for you? Then it may be well with you. For Ruth, in that culture, right, marriage was the way to provide rest for her. And I do believe it does that today too. It does. But what about single people? What about single people? Can they find rest today, or are we just saying it's only in marriage? Well, we've spoken about the wonderful relationship between Ruth and her mother-in-law, Naomi. And I do think good, healthy friendships do provide rest. They do. But all of us, whether married or single, actually have a far higher calling. And that is for our hearts to be entirely satisfied in Jesus. For our whole being to find rest in Jesus. Matthew 11:28 says this, come to me, this is Jesus speaking, come to me, all who labour and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, learn from me, and I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. See, marriage is a picture. It's a picture, an image of a greater thing. This wonderful relationship between Jesus and his church. And he invites you, no matter what your marital status is, to find your true rest in him. Whether you're married, single, divorced, living with singleness, struggling with same-sex attraction, do you know what? What he's saying is find your true rest in him. For he is gentle and lowly. He is kind. Naomi says to Ruth, I want to find rest for you. Jesus says to you, come to me and I will give you rest. Come to me. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to worship. And we're going to come to him. As we take bread and drink the juice, we're reminding ourselves of this wonderful covenant marriage between Christ and his body, us, the church. And that he has won something amazing because of the cross, where he gave his life. As we heard and read, right? We share in his death. We share in his death, and we get to share in his resurrection. So we're going to share bread and the juice together. I encourage you to do it corporately. Don't feel just on your own. No, if you see someone on their own, get them to join with you and just pray, and pray God's blessing on each of you as you share. I'm very conscious. Bringing something like this today may have raised quite a lot of stirring in your heart. You may have been offended by some of the things I said. Okay, you may have been. I would just encourage you, talk to me if that's the case. It may have stirred something about your life choices that you're making right now, and you just think, I need to make some changes. Well, do you know what? You can do that before God. You can make those decisions before God. Because God has this glorious plan for marriage. God has this glorious plan for relationships. God has a glorious plan for his people to find their rest in him. So Jonathan, come and lead us as we sing. And I always say, when you're ready, but don't take half an hour, because we've only got 15 minutes. Okay, so do come forward and share, and let's worship together.